Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. What we're doing today is trying to address a drainage problem we've got. Where I filled in that old pond that didn't hold water is on the side of a hill, and we've got water that's running down the hill, cutting across where we put the garden in, going on down the hill further to the creek and going into the lake. And so we're going to try to capture that water, get it soaked back into the ground so we can make use of it, and hopefully cut down on the erosion problem we're having, because the southwest corner of the garden, we had a big torrential rain, basically got washed out. So we're going to put in kind of a modified permaculture swale to slow that water down and let it soak in. I'm thinking we're probably going to end up having to put in a couple of them, maybe 3, as we go down the hill. The first thing I'm going to do this morning is get out here with the laser level and lay out the line for this swale on grade, following the terrain around. And once I get that done, then I'm going to take the dozer and start cutting it in. We're not going to do a food forest permaculture type swale where we're planting, orchard trees, fruit trees, and that kind of stuff all over it. We will plant trees in there, but it's going to be more stuff that is native to the area. So we'll probably put some dogwoods and, walnut, hickory, pine trees that we've got a few of, that kind of stuff on it, just to hold it in place. So I'm gonna get to work. This is the laser level system that I'm going to be using. It's a Bosch, and the transmitter is a GRL 250HV. I picked this thing up a couple years ago at Home Depot, and it's been pretty good. The way these work, you've got a transmitter. This is your transmitter. See, GRL 250HV there, and it's got a self-leveling head here that spins, and it puts out a laser on a plane. So once you set this up, it self-levels, to a certain extent, and think of it as a sheet of paper laid over the top of the ground you're on. It's just a flat line, and it spins in a circle, or you can set it to work a certain point range if you're only working in one direction. And to go with that, you've got your witness stick or measuring stick and a receiver, and the receiver tells you whether you're high, low. It's got a audio and visual indicator of where you are in relation to where that laser line plane is, and it allows you to set it to a specific elevation and find that across the landscape. Or if you're trying to cut or fill, it'll tell you the difference in elevation by moving that receiver up and down the stick from what your desired height or elevation is. So you can figure out how much you need to take out, how much you need to put back in to reach a level plane that you're trying to build. And what I'm going to do, just below this spring, there's a spring that expresses right up here above the hill, or above us on the hill. And what I'm going to do is come down here and figure out where I can cut a swale in to catch that water, but I'm primarily concerned about catching the water that comes down this hillside. I have never figured out the slope to it, but it's good enough that the water picks up pretty good steam and does quite a bit of erosion damage. So I've got the tripod for the level set up and kind of eyeballed it, gotten it pretty close to level. and then it just screws in on the bottom. There's a, I forget the diameter and pitch of the screw, but it's an industry standard. You know, that works with all kinds of different stuff. And I didn't mention it earlier, but the nice thing about this is it allows you to do with one person what used to take two. Used to, you would do this with a transit level that you've looked through, and if y'all have got any questions, I've got one, I can bring it out and show it to you. But you look through it, and once you've got the instrument set over your point and picked your elevation, you've got a helper that moves with your measuring stick, and as long as you maintain that instrument on a level plane, you can move them to find out where the elevation is on the terrain, or determine difference in elevation by where your sight line hits on that witness stick. You just do the math and figure out whether you're positive or negative. Kind of the same thing you do with this, but you can do this by yourself. So once you've got it set up, you turn it on. And there's a set of electric motors in here, and this head will seek level, and it'll tell you if you're too far outside of its parameters to adjust. And once you get level, that head will start spinning, and the laser will start projecting. And once your laser is projecting, you go ahead and extend your rod. That should be high enough. And what I usually do is come in and get it on here loosely while I'm close to the instrument. Find the alright, it's telling me I'm high. Now it's low. And the thing is, what you've got to bear in mind, your difference between high and low is the thickness of a laser beam. So, you know, for what I'm doing, if I'm within those 3 dots, I think it's probably going to be good enough. You know, we're not doing a precision installation of a piece of manufacturing machinery or something. Alright. So that's got our elevation set. So what I need to do is now move along this hillside and see where if I can find where the terrain is at the same elevation. And there's a bubble level on here so you can get the stick vertical. So right in here, we're at the same elevation we were when we set up the instrument on the initial setup. Now that we got our laser set, what I'm going to do is start on this far side where we want the end to be, and then work my way across the side of this hill, laying out the elevation line. And what you can do, if you get it and you have no indicator, is start moving your stick. You can lean it left and right, pick it up, and see now I'm starting to hit, so I'm about 6 inches low here, so I need to move up the hill. Still low. All right, there it is right there. So that's our elevation line. and then I just move across the hill. You can see the line that this takes around the curve of this hill. And now I'm gonna move across and we'll set up, and I'm gonna do the other side, continuing on the other side of the driveway. All right, this is looking back toward that elevation line we just put in across our driveway. I'm gonna spin you around. Try not to give you motion sickness. I guess I should have dug the gimbal out. And this is where that line continues on across. So I'm going to lay out the rest of the line, and we'll get the dozer ready to go and cut this thing in. Looks like we've lost the laser around the hill. Well, close. May have to reset the laser. Yep, we've lost the laser around the curve of the hill, so I'm going to have to reset it, but that'll be pretty easy. So if it happens that you're out of sight of your laser, like we were around the curve of that hill, it's pretty easy to reestablish your elevation and go on. All you gotta do is move your laser, get it leveled and set up, and that actually looks pretty level, surprisingly enough. Turn it back on, and then go to one of your established elevation markers. There's one there, one over here, and adjust your receiver up and down your witness stick or your measuring stick until you're back in line with the laser, because you're not using the stick to calculate differences in elevation. All you're doing is you're marking this elevation around this hill. So where it is on the stick is irrelevant as long as your reference point is the same elevation that you're trying to continue around the hill. Okay, that's going to be a little high, so I'm going to lower that laser down some so I'm not working with the instrument or the receiver all the way at the top of the stick. Of course, now I may end up with it at the bottom of the stick, but I like to be able to see what the readings are because it's easier to line it up and down. Ooh, I may have got that too far out of whack. No, it picked it up. Okay, so now we're back on elevation. I can continue this around the hill. Basically running through the middle of that walnut tree. We're going to walk this line back around to where we started. When we get around to this end, I may be a little liberal in the interpretation of the line. But you should be able to see how it curves around this hill, going back to meet up with the one on the other side of the driveway. And you see it curves on around the hill, going back to where we started. And I'm not gonna do this like a traditional permaculture swale, like I said earlier. It's not gonna be for growing food and that kind of stuff at this point. But what I'm trying to do is control the water, because we're having a massive water problem on this place. Have had since we bought it, because it's not being controlled. It's all just running off down the side of the mountain going back to the lake, and we need to be able to make use of it and get the soil rehydrated, because it's so dry that even though we had several inches of rain recently, I mean, you can see it's just dry as dust on the top. Now there's places where you dig down 6-8 inches, like in our orchard where we've put about 1.5 feet of mulch in there, that it stays moist all year round. But that's because the water is being captured as it's coming down the hill, and it's allowed to soak in. So we're gonna start cutting this in. I'm gonna quick service the dozer, and then we'll get to work. First thing I'm gonna do is take the corner of the blade and scratch in on elevation following these flags, so I've got a marker that I can follow. And then I'm gonna start turning the dirt down the hill and start making the berm. So what I'm trying to do now is flatten out the bottom of this and widen this thing out so it's got a little bit more water holding capacity. The problem we're having here is all of this rock. I don't know that it's going to work as well as I need it to. Once I get it down a little bit, I'll dig the laser level back out and see where we are for elevation within the swale. Now I'm going to use the laser level to see how close we are to level at the bottom edge of this cut. We want it to be as close to level as we can alongside that berm at the bottom of the swale cut. So I'm going to get this thing set up and start checking it across here and see just how bad it is. If it's within an inch or two, I'm gonna be all right. If there's 6, 8, 10 inches difference, I'm gonna have to go back in and do some more cutting. Short I've got that laser set, and where I'm standing down here in this hole, and how high I had to move this receiver up the pole. Well, call me amazed. It's within 3/4 of an inch of the center point that I started with, so I'm gonna call that good enough. Next thing I need to do is go back and back blade the top of this to smooth down the sharp edge, and then try to start working that in a little bit. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get that done to solidify that lower dam or lower edge, but I think it's going to work pretty good. There's already water starting to come out a little bit from this spring that I'm standing on top of right here. So that's why there was a pond here that I filled in, but the dam was so poorly made and the bottom of it is so full of shelf rock and chunk rock that it would never going to hold water without putting a whole either plastic or rubber liner in it, or doing the whole thing in a liner made out of clay. Next step, since we've confirmed that we're within my tolerance on the bottom of this thing, we're going to come back in and go back to using the back side of the blade and cut this upper slope down so it's not as sharp a drop off, so it's a little bit more smooth transition for the water going in there, and so we can get up here and mow later in the year. Well, we're going to have a change of equipment. I blew a hydraulic line on one of the either tilt or angle cylinders on the dozer, so I'm going to have to pressure wash that and fix it. So I guess there'll be a video coming out about that. But I'm going to take this grater blade and do what I was going to do with the dozer and break this top edge down, and then move all of the dirt that I get from that down to the lower side, and then we'll start trying to walk this lower dam in, for a lack of a better term, a little bit with the tractor to get it to become a little more solid, because we're supposed to get quite a bit of rain this next week. So I'm going to try to get this done. think you get the gist of what I'm doing here. I'm gonna finish rolling this in, and then I'll bring you back and we'll walk the whole thing and kind of see how it turns out. And then later next week we'll definitely know how it's gonna work. Okay, remember I said this thing using the laser level was within 3/4 of an inch of the point that I chose as the reference point all the way across this hillside. And the reason that you don't rely on your eye is, if you look at this, it does not look like it's anywhere near level going across there. And you know, after digging the rocks out and rolling it in, we may have a few high and low spots now from when it was compared to when it was just fresh bladed. But if me looking at it, it does not look level at all. It looks like it's high in the middle. And you know, is that an optical illusion because of the hill going up and curving around? I don't know. But we're supposed to get, like I said earlier, quite a bit of rain this next week, so we'll see how it does. I'm hoping that we can capture enough of this and slow the runoff down that it'll soak back in and we can use it for growing grass and trees. The plan is there will probably be another swale up here going around this point, and then I'm going to step down. I don't know where it's going to end up, either this side of the power line or the other side. There's going to be at least one more and probably two more going down the hill. And I'm going to try to get the drone up and get some footage of this so you can see it from above. But of course now we're under a wind advisory, so that may or may not happen. This drone footage is taken a couple days after the rain stopped. With the fronts moving in and out, the wind was so bad that I couldn't get footage until after the rain had already passed. When the rain was coming hot and heavy, this was full, and you know, obviously it's soaked into the ground now. If you look toward the top of the hill, you can see where we've started putting hay in to help with the erosion and get grass reestablished. Spreading is probably 5-6 years old, and it's just been sitting on the edge of the field unused. What we're trying to do is get the seed back on the ground, use the hay to keep the moisture on the ground so the seed will germinate and stop some of this erosion on this hillside. Once the hay breaks down, it'll put organic matter back in the soil, so it's a win-win if it works and doesn't wash down the hill when we get some of these flooding rains. Nothing like going from freezing weather 6 days ago to 83 degrees and 80% humidity today.
Yeah.
But hey, at least we got a refreshing breeze of 25 to 40 miles an hour.
Moldy hay.
Well, folks, this is going to finish up this project. Since we got this hay spread all the way down to the swale, I'm not too concerned about erosion coming down the hill and filling in the swale. And as time allows, we'll haul hay over from the other part of the farm and start getting it on this lower section below the swale. We're getting into garden season and hay cutting season and calving season and stuff, so we're gonna be pretty busy in addition to building the house. So I don't know when I'm gonna get the other swales cut in, or if we're gonna need them. It depends on, you know, how the ground looks, since we got this erosion problem. Looks like controlled on the upper part of the hill. I want to thank you for watching the video, and if you've got any questions about what we've done and what you see in the video, then drop a comment down below. And by all means, if you like what you see, hit the thumbs up and share with your friends, and subscribe so you can stay up to date on what we're doing, and follow along as we're getting this place back into shape to be a working farm and building our house. Thanks for watching, and y'all have a good day.